And welcome to another show. I've got a very special guest on today with an interesting topic. Her name is Maggie Ference, if you like Maggie, and she's the Senior Vice President of BB Credit and Ops Director of Huntington National Bank. Now, a little bit of background before we go to Maggie. The economic disruption of COVID-19 has challenged small business owners and entrepreneurs to adopt fresh approaches to become more competitive in the post-pandemic marketplace. It's been tough, and this is especially true for minority-owned and women businesses in underserved communities. So to address this issue, Huntington National Bank is offering tips on how to empower your small business and community and building financial security in urban neighborhoods. And it starts and flourishes by first investing in the minority small businesses. In fact, did you know that 70% of small businesses are concerned about financial hardships due to prolonged closures? And 60% of small business closures due to the pandemic are permanent, which is real sad, and they will not be reopening. And last but not least, 41% of black-owned businesses have been shuttered by COVID-19, compared to 17% of white-owned businesses. Interesting. Welcome to Margaret, but I'll call you Maggie. Maggie Ference. Good morning, Maggie.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Well, interesting stats. What do you make of that?
It's scary stats when you hear them read out loud like that. And, COVID has been, it's turned the entire world on its side. And for so many small business owners, you start with a dream, you pour your entire life into the creation, the development, the growth of a small business. You plan for things like, you're breaking your foot or getting sick. You don't really plan for a 15-month, worldwide pandemic, with municipal shutdowns and, your entire industry unable to exist. So this has been tough. This has been different. This is absolutely unprecedented. And what we've really seen is for those businesses, for the 60% that will never reopen, there's so much opportunity that remains for the 40%. We want to make sure that we're helping and reaching out to as many small business owners as possible to say, not just as a community, we support you and we want to make sure that you find opportunities to stay in business, but let's have conversations about what it takes to flex during these most difficult times and how can we help you with sustainment, access to capital, recapitalizing that balance sheet, and potentially even opening or growing a small business as COVID continues to hopefully wrap up, and as we look to the new normal of what it takes to run a small business after this pandemic.
Well, you're trying to fund and support and what have you. Can you give me a guideline? Are we talking 100,000, 50,000, or could we go as high as 500,000? What do you regard as a small business?
So a small business, as you jump between institution to institution, everyone from the media to the federal government, you're going to get very, very different, descriptions for what is a small business. We think of a small business at Huntington as actually up to $20 million in annual revenue, but we start lending as low as $1,000. We'll start with a startup. You haven't even made a single dollar yet, and we'll help you establish your small business, get it started, help it grow, have it evolve over the years, and then grow with you. And one of the things that I stress the most about starting a small business or even growing a small business is making sure that you have a good financial partner. There's lots of different ways to raise money. There's lots of different ways to really start a small business. But making sure that you have a strong relationship with a financial partner that shares your vision, that has products and services to help you grow is absolutely critical. Now more than ever, as COVID is going to continue to create some variable costs that we can't even sit in this moment and predict will occur over the next couple of years.
Well, it's encouraging because, in my own case, I've been involved with a couple of dear friends who have wonderful concepts and businesses. For 5 years, we've been trying to get money, to get a startup, to get it off and going. And, everybody you talk to as an investor wants 80% of your company or more, or they want to take over control. How do you get around that if you're going to be a startup?
Well, that's just it. Everything has a price. And there's no such thing as free money. There's no such thing as free advice. And really making sure that you start with a fundamental understanding of what you want as a small business owner. So taking the time to articulate your business plan, your operational model into writing, putting it into a business plan, cash flow projections, a pro forma balance sheet, all of those things are most critical. They become the backbone of what you want to do and how your operations are going to run. And then you head into conversations around access to capital and funding that small business. When you look at different options, I mean, you can have an angel investor, you can borrow money from a relative, you can do a GoFundMe, you can look for legitimate, venture capital firms who will actually invest. But to your point, there's an equity cost to that. And in some cases, a control cost, especially when they don't share your timeline, when your vision gets disrupted by some of the unknown things. So making sure that your partner, your spouse, your financial partner, your bank, whoever you are, quote unquote, in business with, understands what it's going to take to start that business. And in some cases, understands that you may not have a paycheck coming home for several weeks, months, years as a small business owner while you get it up and running. Those are tough conversations, but they need to be had up front.
Well, it's excellent advice, for someone who's looking to start a small business, particularly in today's landscape. With those stats we read out earlier, there's one that really stands out, and you might have an answer for it. 41% of black-owned businesses, right, compared to 17% of white-owned businesses. So what's the diff?
This is a conversation about starting off under-resourced. And one of the biggest concerns is around, we talk about balance sheets need to be built to weather storms. So think about, a rainy day fund. If you start a small business by bootstrapping, borrowing off of a credit card, borrowing money from a friend or community, starting off in a position where your balance sheet is not well capitalized to handle surprises. Something like COVID just completely decimated entire communities of small business owners because it was just frankly too much, too fast, and then stayed too prolonged. Mm-hmm. There's also a relationship between a lot of the service providers and those that are coming from minority, female, and veteran-owned small business communities. So you tend to see restaurant owners and hairdressers and some of the areas that were actually the most impacted by an industry shutdown. And those are the ones that also, unfortunately, didn't have the balance sheet to help weather this. The other piece of it is something that I'm continuing to just frankly preach about, and that is continuing to develop and establish an independent tax ID number for your small business, separate from you as an individual, and keeping good financial records. Because one of the biggest tragedies of really the COVID stimulus packages was how many minority, female, veteran-owned small businesses were not prepared to get a PPP loan. They didn't have the documentation. They didn't have a relationship with a bank. They didn't know how to get access to the money that the federal government was essentially trying to give back to them for years of paying taxes. And the inability for them to leverage those PPP loans, in some cases, we will ultimately find out was probably the death of that small business. Right. And that's really unfortunate. And we'd like to really rebuild that space so in the future we don't see that happen again.
Yeah, let's hope so. Maggie, in the minute we've got left, can you share resources that are available for minority-owned businesses and startups?
Absolutely. Well, there's obviously a tremendous number of resources in each individual city across our nation, working with everything from SBA.gov to local SBDC, CDFIs, minority and mission-based organizations that are looking to help start and sustain small businesses. At Huntington, we actually have a program specifically for minority, female, veteran-owned small businesses, as well as those that are located in an LMI or majority minority census tract to increase access to capital in a low-cost and very patient fashion. We call the program Lift Local because we're really focused on increasing the number of small businesses throughout our retail footprint and eventually nationwide. And you can learn more about that by going to huntington.com, keyword small business or keyword Lift Local.
Okay, that's fabulous. Now, I noticed you mentioned female only. Does that exclude men?
Well, fun fact, if you decide to open a small business in LMI or a majority minority census tract, we would love to support you with these same resources. But we lend to everyone. We just have some extra bonus features that come along with the program that I just mentioned that include no fees, free business checking accounts, free TM services, free fraud monitoring. And then we also do free to anyone, regardless of race, gender, age, ethnicity, free financial education starting at huntington.com through a partnership that we have with Operation Hope. You can create a business plan, cash flow projections, and a pro forma balance sheet, as well as talk to a coach about designing, growing, or sustaining your small business. Again, all for free. You don't have to even be a customer of the bank.
Thanks, Maggie. That's fantastic. All right. Well, this will be up on my site as well as directions and so on for anybody to go back on. Maggie is a Senior Vice President at the Business Banking Credit SBA and Operations Director for Huntington National Bank. It's a $100 billion regional bank based out of Columbus in Ohio. Thank you, Maggie, and good luck with the project.
Appreciate it. Thank you.